Following Jesus is expensive. And the one over in the corner here is telling me, yes, better have nice clothes. They won't let you in the church building. No, not quite, but it got me laughing. Yes, following Jesus is expensive. Let me explain how. I'm Zach. This is The Average Christian. It's just a project about what it means to have a relationship with God and how to live this out. So we try to keep this in practical terms. How do I know that following Jesus is expensive? And one of the ways is because of a great temptation to call out what's so wrong with the world. I know for a fact that if we recorded videos, and I just talked about what all was wrong with the world, and I just listed sin after sin, and some of you would look at that and say, that's standing up for the truth, that we would get more followers. We would probably get more views in doing that. And that's fine. I understand it. The world needs to know what sin is. But not in that way. And that's not how Jesus went around doing it. And we've got to model after him. But you see people doing so, and I hear a lot of Christians talking about what all's wrong with the world, and I understand it. I understand what it's like when Peter said that Lot was vexed when he looked around Sodom and Gomorrah and he saw what he saw, and it gets worse and worse. But I saw a post, and I'm going to give Edwin credit on this. Edwin Jones was an instructor of mine, and if you don't follow him on Facebook, go ahead, because what he posts is brilliant. Now, it's funny to watch because when he posts about Jesus, he gets very few comments and very few likes. If he posts anything that relates to politics whatsoever, the comment section blows up, and so do the likes and so forth, which tells you a lot. But he posted something to this effect, and I'm going to use this as the basis for this video. He was talking about telling culture that they are wrong has not exactly brought about change. You know, we have been talking about that. He said instead, more so pushback, actually, when we're telling everybody how wrong they are and how much they need to change and how much this is a sin and so forth. Look, we do need to call sin out, but there's a way to go about it. So telling everybody they're wrong has not had the results that we've hoped for. And the New Testament does speak about sins in the first century, but to admonish Christians not to go back to them, to admonish Christians not to get caught up. So when it's talking about sins out in the world, it's telling us not to be worldly people, not to be like the world. And so you have verses like 1 Corinthians. Let me see here. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 9. By the way, this is following a scathing rebuke of somebody within the church who was just continuing in sin and nobody was saying anything or doing anything about it. And Paul tells them blatantly how to handle this person. But you come to verse 9 and he follows up with this. And for all of you who want to just rant, the N plays a big difference, rant and rave about what all's wrong with everything out there in the world, notice these verses, please. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 9, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Not at all meaning the sexually immoral of this world or the greedy and swindlers or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. You'd have to leave here in order not to be around any of that. You'd have to stop going to Walmart or the mall or wherever, or just going outside, in fact. But now I am writing to you not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother if he's guilty of sexual immorality or greed or is an idolater or reveler, drunkard or swindler, not even to eat with such a one. For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? God judges those outside. Purge the evil person from among you. He tells us how to deal with sin amongst us. And the judgment begins with the household of God in 1 Peter, I believe it's chapter 4. So judging the world was not the priority of the church, not the priority of the apostles, not the priority of Jesus himself. The great power of Christianity, as Edwin was saying here, is in showing the transformation that has taken place in Jesus. The light of Christian lives is the means by which the church is to reprove the world. Let me read that again. The light of Christ-like lives is the means by which the church is to reprove the world. So in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 11 beginning, Ephesians 5 and verse 11, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. By the light, what does that mean? By the light of Jesus. If you and I are living the way we should, it exposes by light those sins and that darkness, and it puts them to shame, hopefully. And there's a lot of other verses we could throw in here, but this is a fantastic one to use. So me living righteously, you've noticed how people, when they find out you're a Christian, when they find out that you don't engage in certain things, a lot of people will show you respect. A lot of people will feel ashamed on their own. It's not the goal of trying to live righteously to put everybody else to shame, but it's one of the byproducts. So you and I should be showing that light of Jesus in our lives. And finally, he says the following: this, of course, requires a greater personal investment than to simply call people out. And it explains why Jesus asks for such an investment. Meaning, if I have to pay more attention to me and how I'm living, I have less time to call everybody else out and to point out what's wrong with them. That's probably a big part of the reason why we do such things, why we call out sin and some of us focus so much on what all's wrong with the world, because we don't want that light shining back at us. We don't want that interrogation back on ourselves. If we would invest in Jesus more and invest with our works and looking at our lives and so forth, we'd have much less time to be calling out sin and degrading people, and more time to try to teach them and give them what we have, which is this salvation. So he uses Matthew chapter 10, verses 38 and 39, when Jesus was sending out those on this commission. He says the following in verse 38: whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. I need to make that investment into Christ. I need to stop badgering and belittling other people who've not yet made that investment. I need to stop destroying the world for being like the world. We expect that. I need to stop being shocked that the world is acting like the devil and practicing sin. Instead, looking at my life, seeing what a difference I can make, not just in language and the way I talk, but in the way I live. And that's one way we can start to make those changes and stand up for what's right. I want to thank you for being with us today. If you have not yet subscribed and you're watching on YouTube, please hit this button below. The video we last released is over here. What YouTube recommends is over here if you want to keep watching. For those listening on podcasts, thank you for being with us as well. We ask that you subscribe, rate, and review, and everybody, please share this with someone else.